Hi. I know just a couple of videos ago I said I wasn't going to do video log movie reviews for every movie I saw in the theaters this year. Then Venom happened, so here we go. But I will get into some spoilers here. Spoilers that you pretty much at this point probably already know about. I have been something of an aficionado for cinematic misfires. I've mentioned this before in other reviews, how it just intrigues me to see how much a property, especially a franchise property, and especially in this day and age, a comic book or superhero-based franchise property can go completely off the rails. But it just intrigues me when a studio has the license to a pretty popular character, or like I said, a pretty popular franchise or mythology, and just take some oddball turns with their creative decisions. And man, the comedic factor of those decisions is on full display here with Venom. I was laughing so hard throughout this movie. And again, it's laughter that is semi-earned here or there because some things might be intentionally funny, but also because of just the scope of how, man, that was a miscalculation on the studio's part. I knew I was in for something a little special when everything building up to this film was Tom Hardy and Ruben Fleischer and the crew and cast kind of going out there and saying, this is going to be hard, this is going to be dark and gritty and edgy. And then immediately when you start to kind of see some TV spots for it, it says PG-13, and I'm like, no. Uh-oh, they cut some stuff. And it's pretty apparent here with this version of Venom, because for all the touting in previous trailers and in kind of previous first looks about how this was going to be visceral and how Venom was going to be, biting people's heads off, and had, that scene in the trailers like eyes, lungs, pancreas. As soon as I saw the PG-13 rating tied to this, I kind of knew we're not going to see any of that. It's there in the movie, but they are going to edit the hell out of those sequences to make this a PG-13. And part of me was kind of wondering why they go PG-13 with this character. Ruben Fleischer, who directed and wrote Zombieland, which I really, I enjoy actually. It's a great take on zombies and also kind of a great comedic film that isn't afraid to kind of display all the trimmings, let's say. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would purposefully want to neuter something just for the viscera. Tom Hardy, his performance, without a doubt, is the highlight of this whole experience on a couple different levels. First of all, he's the only fully realized character, and I'm excluding his Venom side on this. Venom himself as a character is really underdeveloped, and his heroic turn at a certain point in the movie is really kind of out of nowhere, and he just exposits why he's turning to the heroic side. The Eddie Brock side of things, I do like this character. I do like the performance he's going with here. This guy who's a little rough around the edges, who did some pretty shady and extremely unlikable things to get a story, especially to his girlfriend, betraying her trust and things like that. At a certain point in the film, you're like, well, yeah, you're going to get caught with your hand in the cookie jar at this point, Eddie, dumbass. And then as soon as I thought that, his boss at his news site called him, you're a smart guy, but you're kind of a dumbass. Glad the script and I are on the same wavelength here. But yeah, his role as Eddie Brock, this journalist who has like a Vice-like show. I like his portrayal. I like his performance. If you're going to take the Spider-Man aspect out of the Venom story arc, this is kind of the Eddie Brock I expected we'd get. So he didn't disappoint me really on any level. And he's sort of a great physical comedian. He is fighting with himself because the Venom symbiote is taking over. There are points where he's talking to himself, kind of rambling, like skittish and everything like that. There are points where Venom's voiceover comes in. He's just like hungry, and it scares him right out of his seat on a trolley car, and you believe that he is very much just flustered all the time by this critter. There are points where maybe you're supposed to be taking it seriously, but the facial things he's doing, the wide spastic movements he has to do with himself at times. Like I said, fighting with himself to be like, stop it, let go of that, to chowing down on a live lobster in a lobster tank. This is comedic gold right here, and I love you, Tom Hardy, for that. The other actors, Michelle Williams, Riz Ahmed, man, they deserve some better dialogue and some better characterization. Quality actors trying so hard to keep up with Tom Hardy in this movie, and it's just not working. Michelle Williams, the most she comes alive in any scene here where I feel it's like her character's allowed to is honestly when she gets to interact with Eddie as Venom. There's a scene in the woods, and spoilers here, Eddie and Venom have been separated at a certain point in the movie, and Venom has to bond with her in order to get back to Eddie. And so there's a scene in the woods which is actually a pretty creepy looking scene. You can imagine Scarlett Johansson from Under the Skin to just be a couple of yards away on fire. Spoilers there too for that movie, I guess. She takes out these guys who are about to kill Eddie, and she's in full she-Venom regalia. She ends up making out with Eddie to transfer Venom back to him. So for a good solid 10 seconds, you see Venom making out with Tom Hardy in this movie. And that's a thing that I'm sure won't get blown out of astronomical proportions on the internet. Any number of DeviantArt pages. Oh, man. She actually kind of comes alive in a dialogue exchange where she's like, I'm coming with you guys. I'm going to help you out here. And Venom's like, no. And he's like, this is going to get ugly. She's like, I can get ugly too. And he's like, not this kind of ugly or something. And he takes off into the night. And she's like, that's bullshit. Like, that's the most energized and most animated she is in this whole movie. And I got to give her props for being able to inject some kind of seriousness into that moment. Yeah, you deserved a better character, Michelle Williams. Riz Ahmed, he's evil Elon Musk. So regular Elon Musk, I guess, depending on how you think of Elon Musk here. You can't get above a dull roar in regards to how villainous his villain can get. Carlton Drake. So he's very subdued, and it is that stereotypical, this is your corporate bad guy. This is a detriment to the movie, but I was getting Catwoman flashbacks at many points throughout this movie. Venom and Eddie's initial connection where it's causing him to do weird things, like he is consistently hungry. So he's scarfing down raw chicken or spoiled chicken in his trash. He's vomiting that up. He dives, like I said, into a lobster tank at a restaurant and starts chowing down on the lobster. And he's like shaking, convulsing. I immediately went back to scenes of Halle Berry like being enticed by catnip, drinking milk. And he even has the annoying neighbors, or the annoying neighbor who plays metal music and practices shred guitar across the hall for him, which, you know, Sonic's irritate the Venom symbiote. So at one point he's like, hey, can you turn it down over there? He's like, yeah, whatever, man. He's like, turn it down or something. And the guy's like, oh shit, okay, fine, I will. That was like, this is Catwoman flashbacks for me. To Riz Ahmed, your CEO of evil, channeling Sharon Stone. Yeah, Venom was yanked forcibly out of the mid-2000s glut of superhero movies. It is a marvel, no pun intended, or maybe intended, you never know. Sony, it's a spectacle of what bizarreness. I couldn't be mad at this movie. And don't get me wrong, I am not a Venom hater, far from it. I actually like the character of Venom quite a bit. When I was little, Maximum Carnage was my access point to Spider-Man and Marvel Comics. That's what got me into Spider-Man and his assortment of bad guys and supporting characters. And Venom was front and center in Maximum Carnage. I liked Venom. I liked what they did with him back in those days. He was actually a formidable opponent. My rankings of Spidey villains go Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Venom. Because Green Goblin and Venom, they know where to hit Spider-Man. They know where he lives, essentially. And so that always intrigued me, where you have this dark reflection of the hero with all of his abilities, but abuses them to torment him in his personal life. I like that concept. And even when Venom kind of softened up and became something of the Lethal Protector, which this movie arguably is really trying to go for, since they can't call upon Spider-Man. There were moments in that particular arc for the character that I enjoyed too in the comics, but this movie really just goes skin deep with regards to those traits. Maybe Ruben Fleischer is going for kind of a very sarcastic twist on this franchise, on this story, because that is kind of maybe his roots with stuff like Zombieland. Maybe he's aware of how inherently ludicrous and silly this is, so he's going to get as much animation and vivid physical comedy out of Tom Hardy as he can. At no point was I really bored. Okay, take that back. When Carlton Drake, Riz Ahmed, gets serious, when this movie strives to do anything seriously or talk about any part of its stupid plot seriously, I started to lose interest pretty quick. I was like, yeah, I know, you're gonna kill Jenny Slate. Just get to it, man. Can we get back to Eddie talking to and making out with himself? I enjoy this movie probably for all the reasons Sony didn't think you would enjoy this movie for. Getting into mid and post credits scenes, because like every comic book movie, this has them. The mid-credits scene is promising a sequel, and you can probably guess where that sequel is going, because it contains an actor you knew was attached to this project, but you're like, I haven't seen him show up yet, and he shows up in a Ronald McDonald fright wig. If that's not hints enough as to who he's playing for any of you Spider-Man Venom fans out there, I can see the potential for that. He needs to get a better wig. So that's all I have to say about that. The post-credit scene, and this is important because the post-credit scene isn't actually anything having to do with the movie. It is a full-on scene from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And while that movie looks like it has more of an idea of what it wants to do with itself than Venom does, it plays into why I feel Venom is PG-13. I feel Sony, when they saw what was happening with Venom, when they were like, man, this thing's kind of a wreck. Let's try to hobble some PG-13 cut together, so at least that way we can get more of the kiddies in, even though this really isn't much of a kid's film. Venom and Eddie and every character under the sun is throwing the word shit around like every 30 seconds. Sequences where Venom actually bites into people and eviscerates people have been significantly whittled down to show the bare minimum. So that's part of it, to get more of the younger demographic in there because they got to make up for the numbers. And then to be like, you know what? We have another Spider-Man movie coming out that has a little bit more of the fun Lego movie type aspect going for it that really drew in crowds. Let's whittle it down to a PG-13 for that, but also because let's show off a little bit of Spider-Verse here. Let's give them that to tide them over till Christmas. That's my theory as to why Venom is so neutered here, even though I don't think it would have made much difference. Plot points are dropped in and out. There's a 6-month period where the main symbiote villain Riot, which I'm also glad these symbiotes call themselves Venom and Riot just from the get-go. There's no like, hey, we're like poison to evil everywhere, we should call ourselves Venom. Or like, hey, I'm all about causing all kinds of chaos here, I'm gonna call myself Riot. No, those are apparently their symbiote House of L names. On my planet, I'm called Venom. I know I'm going off on a tangent now, but I kind of love the fact that in Venom's exposition as to why he's turning into a good guy, he's like, I'm kind of a loser on my planet. And so I sought out a loser on this planet, you, Eddie. So you've kind of saved me here. Together, our loserdom can save humanity. That made me laugh. I'm like, I love the fact that this symbiote is suffering from a severe self-esteem issue. The action involving the symbiotes, involving any kind of hand-on-hand combat, it's quick-paced. It's that fast, kind of choppy edit. At times, there's some pretty cool shots, like Venom leaping up onto a porch or something like that to get a guy who's shooting at him. That's kind of cool looking. The action sequences are an editing nightmare, and it's all at night with creatures who are already jet black to dark silver, so you can barely see what they're doing half the time. I really don't know how much more was cut out of this movie, but it can't have looked as better. There's just so much WTF having to deal with this movie that I couldn't be mad at it. I'm sure diehard Venom fans who have a massive hard-on for old school 80s, 90s, like Take No Prisoners Venom, who are like, I want to see the character done proper justice on screen. I am sure they're one of two things. They're extremely jazzed for some reason about this version of the character, probably because it's not Topher Grace and it didn't come to us via a dance number with Tobey Maguire, but also they might vehemently hate this movie with a lot of venom because it's like you took my character and you made him a joke. I like Venom. I like what the character represents when he's handled well, but at the same time, I'm kind of grateful that we've gotten this version of superhero Tommy Wiseau. Because that's kind of what I got out of this. This is the room of superhero movies for me at this point. I've seen the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie. I genuinely enjoy some of the merits of the Fantastic Four Roger Corman movie because they're trying, there's sincerity there. Here, the desperate ploys of the studio were so transparent. Like I said, the editing was something of a nightmare, but offered for some sort of hilarious results. And Tom Hardy pulled off the best comedic performance of the year I've seen. He is comedic gold here. And I mean that as a compliment, Mr. Hardy. I know, you probably were hoping this would be big and badass in that cool, edgy 90s aesthetic. Sorry, but you are truly, truly a professional and a performer and a scholar, sir. I talked about this movie way more than I anticipated I would. But once you get into some of the tangents having to deal with the ridiculousness that is Venom, it is beautiful. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot. Eminem. What the hell, Marshall? He does the Venom theme song at the end of this movie. Go for the Hardy comedic performance and some of his hilarious back and forths with himself, and stay for the unbelievably dated Venom rap during the credits. Oh man, I still love you, Eminem, but to hear you say symbiosis, Eddie Brock, and the main chorus of I'm Venom, Venom, Venom. I love it. It is so bad. If you need a good laugh, go watch Venom. Sure.